What's going on, everybody? Blake from the Linux Fraud here, and today I wanted to talk about Vanilla OS. Personally, I think it's pretty interesting in theory, so I wanted to whip up a VM and talk a little bit about it. Now, when we talk about Vanilla OS, I'm not talking about the DE. We're not going to talk about GNOME because that would be pointless. It's a vanilla GNOME experience. It is what it is. If you know what GNOME is, if you've ever used it, then that's what this is. I want to talk about the package managers, and I say that plural because, yes, Vanilla OS allows you to install packages from a plethora of different package managers. It has its native package manager, Apix, APX, I believe it's pronounced Apix, which uses Ubuntu's repos, but you can also install things, say, from the AUR. You can use Zipper, DNF, apt, which apt doesn't really make much sense to me since Apix already uses Ubuntu's repos, so I don't get it, but whatever. And you've got a couple other ones. We'll go over those. I have an opinion about it, which I could be totally wrong because I'm not very big on containerization and like Docker and all of that. What Apix is it's basically a wrapper for DistroBox, right? And that's what allows you to make these containers for different subsystems, which means when you install applications with Apix, they're all in their own containers. But because of this, you can also install packages from other package managers, right? There are, I think, 6 other ones. There is DNF, apt, Zipper, the AUR, Nix, XBPS, and APK, that being Fedora, Debian, OpenSUSE, Arch, NixOS, Void Linux, and Alpine Linux, respectively. In theory, this means that you're able to install and use literally any application that you want from any of these distributions. And in my opinion, I think the biggest draw for people would be the AUR, having the ability to be on a quote-unquote stable system but still be able to install things from the AUR, because we all know that the AUR has pretty much like any application that you could think of. And I could see this being a draw for some people, having a quote-unquote stable system and still being able to use the AUR. In my opinion, if you want to use the AUR, then just use an Arch-based system. It's not as scary as people make it seem. So that's what Vanilla OS is in like broad strokes, but let's open up the VM and talk a little bit more about this, because I do have a few things to say. And this is Vanilla OS. Again, we're not talking about the DE here. It's literally just Vanilla GNOME. I don't think we need to talk about that. I will say, this ships not with Firefox. It ships with GNOME Web, and this is the first time I've used it. It would never replace Firefox for me, but I do kind of like it, just how minimal it is. So this is where you can go in and you can actually pick which system you want to, what container you want to go into, right? So you can open this up. I haven't made, at least on this VM, I've only made a couple Arch Linux subsystems. Your main subsystem, which is APX managed, they all say that just with whatever package manager behind it. But you can go in here and you can add whichever subsystem that you want. Now, you can do that, but I think what most people, I'm looking at this as like a normal desktop Linux user, right? The normal person, this is probably going to do this. They're going to get this all installed. They're going to open up a terminal. They're going to type in apx install --AUR Firefox. Because first of all, Firefox is not installed on here. But the thing is if I'm just doing this for an example, if I wanted to install Firefox, I would just install Firefox from APX or Apix, however the fuck you say it. Apix install Firefox. And now that's how I would install Firefox. We'll install it, and I want to show you something here because I've had troubles with this sometimes. The last few applications I've installed, it's worked fine. After you're done installing an application, Apix is going to ask if you want it to automatically add the binary to path. Okay, I already got an error up there. Apix is going to prompt you if you want it to automatically add the binary to path, right? So that you can, doing that will add an icon to your menu, and then it will also let you launch that application from the terminal. It's been hit or miss, though. You can either say yes or default is no, but if you say no, you're going to have to run that command apix export --bin Firefox, And now that also is hit or miss too. This time I am going to run yes. It's going to export that binary. And from here, it hits me with a user bin Firefox requires the Firefox snap to be installed. I'm assuming that's because I used Apex, and since it's based on Ubuntu, and Ubuntu uses snaps by default, let's run apex install --dnf Firefox. Now, 99% of the time, using the AUR, DNF, zipper, all of them except for Nix works. Nix just literally does not work. It throws an error every time that Nix is not a command. So maybe that's something that I'm doing. I don't think it is, but that is something that I think would need to be fixed, especially if people are going to try and use the Nix package manager. While that's doing that, I will show you. If we go apx install --nix, what's a package that we could install? Just a random ass package, right? Neofetch. It just hits me with a executable file not found in path. Now, I get that I could add this to the path, but the point is that this is shit that is all supposed to work out of the box, right? Every other package manager works. Why Nix doesn't work, I do not know. Literally every time, that's the error it throws, and I shouldn't have to add it to path to use it if that is the selling point of this distribution. So we got DNF up here in the corner running, trying to install Firefox. We got Nix that doesn't work. Now I've also installed Mulvad Browser and Mulvad VPN from the AUR. I use the Mulvad VPN all the time on my host system. For some reason, it will not open up on here. When I try to open it, we can go up here, open up the menu. Mulvad VPN, watch it opens now, but it just will not open, and so I don't know why. It works perfectly fine on my system, on any other system that I've put it on, an Arch-based system, right? But for some reason, it will not open here. Mulvad Browser does. That opens up fine. One application not opening is fine. I mean, it's not because it should open, but it is what it is. I'm not going to really, nick a point for that. So now I should theoretically be able to run Firefox, and it opens. Just like that, it does open. So I don't know what was wrong with the apt. Again, it's just that I know that the error was that Firefox. Oh no, that was the snap thing, right? That's probably Ubuntu's fault. And now I did read on their website that they are going from being based on Ubuntu to Debian testing or Debian SID. I forgot which one. I think it's Debian SID. Maybe that'll change some things. This is my thing. What the fuck is the point of all of these package managers? That's why it kind of seems gimmicky to me, if I'm being honest. I don't see the point, especially because Apex it's based on, or it uses Ubuntu's repos, so you can pretty much get any application that you want. I mean, of course, I couldn't install Alacrity. There are some applications that app doesn't have. So, for one, why are you? I mean, I get that they're using Apex because that's the wrapper for DistroBox. So that's fine. I'm not even gonna say anything about that because they could just use apt, but then they couldn't do the whole containerization thing, I'm assuming. The only package manager that I can see worth using other than Apex is the AUR, because then at that point you could use Apex for just your normal packages that are still in containers. They still get containerized, but what's the point of using DNF and zipper and APK? It just doesn't really make sense to me. Why am I going to install Thunar with DNF, NeoVim with apt? And it just doesn't really make much sense to me. Again, the AUR makes sense because then you have access to tons of applications that even apt doesn't have access to, right? But that's the only one that makes sense. The point of a package manager and why people use package managers is because they can do different things. Okay, for DNF, for example, it has DNF history. Now, I've never used it, but I've heard that DNF history is kind of like you can roll back your system if you fuck it up. That makes sense, but This is an immutable distribution. All the core utils and the file system underneath, you can't change it anyway. You're not being able to use like DNF, and I'm using DNF just for this example, but I'm sure there's other things that these other package managers can do on their actual distro that you can't use here. Now, if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments and I will eat my fucking words. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, am I making sense here? Back to the DNF history example. People use DNF and they use Fedora. I'm not saying that's specifically the reason, but when they're using Fedora, they can use DNF history. You're not going to use that here because it's an immutable system. So what's the point? That's why I kind of feel like having access to all these package managers is kind of gimmicky. It's kind of just to say, hey, we can. And it kind of seems pointless to me, if I'm being honest. Now, an immutable distribution, that isn't pointless to me. Like Fedora Silverblue, right? That makes sense. I understand the security aspect of it, but it just seems gimmicky in this context. Because again, the AUR, awesome. Then you can have a stable, immutable distribution that's based on Ubuntu, but also have access to the AUR. I think that's cool. But I think that all these other package managers are just thrown in there just to say that they're in there and you have access to every distribution, which doesn't make sense to me. Like, pretty much anything that I can get here on Arch, you can get on Fedora. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff that you can't because I do have access to the AUR and Fedora doesn't. Yes, it has Copper, but whatever, that's a different conversation. But a package manager is more than just installing packages, right? Like, it's integrated into your whole system. Again, with the DNF history thing, it just doesn't really make much sense to me. You're only using these package managers to install applications. But if you picked one of these package managers, that one package manager is going to pretty much have all the packages that another has. DNF has pretty much all the ones that Zypper has, right? Like, I can go on or I can use Zypper to install Alacrity. I can use DNF to install Alacrity. And it just doesn't really make any sense to me. It just seems pointless, if I'm being honest. But I don't know. This was just a quick video. Again, this was not talking about the desktop environment because I'm not going to sit here and talk about GNOME. We all know what GNOME is. I just wanted to kind of give my opinion on this these multiple package manager things. They just don't really make sense to me. I think the idea in theory is kind of cool, but again, it just doesn't really make much sense. That's it. That's all I have for you guys. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button because it would really help out and I would really appreciate it. And if you like this content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we have a bunch more content coming your way.